Dan, welcome to Woodhaven. And here's the mic. Mike's nice.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to speak here this afternoon. As mentioned, the district has recently expanded, and Woodhaven is now a big part of the district. And it is a very broad district and hard to define in a quick sentence, but mostly in Brooklyn and then a little bit of downtown Manhattan as well. So I've been running for about a year now, running around the district, talking to a lot of different groups, a lot of people. It's also a very diverse district, very ethnically diverse district, and I've gotten great responses from all groups, all ethnicities, all age groups, and it's very encouraging, and I'm happy to be here today speaking in Woodhaven. So I just want to talk a little bit about myself, my background, and then talk about what I'm hoping to accomplish when I get to Washington, and then just open the floor to any questions. That's okay. Okay, great. So again, my name's Dan O'Connor. I'm originally from Brooklyn, and that's where I did my childhood, and later moved out to New Jersey, where I did study business in university. I also have a master's degree in international relations. I then moved out to Asia, where I lived for 6 years. I traveled all around the world. Been to about probably 150 cities around the world. I have a great appreciation for other cultures. My future wife is from the Dominican Republic, and I also speak Mandarin and Cantonese. So I've been very engaged with the Chinese community. The district now has about 100,000 Chinese American citizens, but I've been engaged all across the district. We opened up our office in the Lower East Side about a month ago, and we just finished our ballot access drive, which was very successful, and election day is about 2 months away. So again, I'm from New York. I come from a family of union members. My father was a member of the union as well, the Publishers Union. My grandfather was a member of the Transit Union. I have a great appreciation for unions and union members. And I also have come from a business background, so I have a great appreciation for business owners and allowing businesses to flourish. The economy is in really bad shape right now, and when I want to introduce policies that specifically encourage growth in the economy, I'm putting forth legislation to try to help rebuild the waterfront in Brooklyn, try to bring manufacturing and jobs to that area. It's basically gone to waste for many, many years, the waterfront in Brooklyn. I want to try to bring manufacturing back to New York, specifically in the waterfront, try to make use of some of these abandoned factories and warehouses. And I have a background in economics as well. So I also work for an economic policy institute in Asia. I actually predicted the economic collapse before it even happened, and I'm critical of the responses that have happened since then. Instead of putting money back in the hands of individuals, middle income and lower income families, the federal government responded by putting money in the hands of large banks and corporations. And this goes against the original Democratic Party. The original Democratic Party once said that we should not be doing favors for corporations and large banks. We should be here helping out the middle income and the lower income families who really need the help. On top of that, some of the issues that I'm very passionate about are the new National Defense Authorization Act, which passed about 2 months ago, which essentially allows the federal government the legal authority to detain any American citizen indefinitely without a trial. It's one of the scariest pieces of legislation, perhaps in our nation's history. It essentially turns our rule of law upside down. It goes against everything that I was taught as a child. They can take any person here in the room and send you away without a trial. And over 90% of the American people are against this legislation. However, over 90% of the politicians in Washington, D.C. voted, I'm sorry, over 80% of the politicians in Washington, D.C. voted for the National Defense Authorization Act. It's a great example of the disconnect between the people and the politicians in Washington, D.C. Over 80% of the American people were against the bailouts for the big banks and corporations. However, over 80% of the politicians in Washington, D.C. voted for it. I'm going to be focusing on bipartisan issues when I get to Washington, issues that affect both Democrats and Republicans that they're concerned about. These are the ones that I'm going to be fighting for. And I'm also going to be trying to focus on putting forth legislation to bring jobs and manufacturing back to New York City. I would like to open up the floor for any questions, any specific concerns that people might have about the community. Happy to talk about that as well. Yes?
Do you live in the district?
I do. I live on Lower East Side, Chinatown area.
You don't have to tell me where. Just thank you.
Sure. Yep. Yes.
Roger.
Sir.
Hi. We hear a lot of rhetoric lately about how corporate taxes are way too high, and that there's been basically some of the, at least the most recent proposals from Congressman Ryan, sort of take more money away from the middle class and tend to move it up the corporate and affluent ladder. What we have is history that shows that in the 50s, which everyone would agree were pretty much good grow days during the Ike administration, 6% of the GDP was paid in corporate taxes.
Right.
And now it's floating around 2%. So there is really a disconnect between the rhetoric of corporations are paying too much taxes, which they're paying historically low taxes, and what's actually happening now. How are you going to go into a situation which you say, talk about bipartisan, when the other side doesn't even want to listen to what is historically proof about how now the middle class are basically being taxed out of existence?
Right.
How do you change that argument?
Sure. Well, I think it's an important question, and I think shifting the tax rate 5% here and 10% there, up or down, I don't think this is one of the major issues concerning our country right now. We have the biggest debt in world history. There's a potential economic collapse of the whole system. So I think 5% here, 10% there, I think it would affect the economy in general. However, when I'm going there, I'm more focused on broad, big issues. We spend $1 trillion a year overseas in maintaining the military-industrial complex. I want to cut all that. We spend $30 billion a year on a federal war on drugs, which is a complete failure, and almost everyone in the district is against it who I've spoken with. I want to make broad cuts on these types of issues. I think people like Congressman Ryan, they're really just tweaking, cutting along the edges on these issues. We could tax all the richest corporations and billionaires in the world, 90% of their income, and it will still only be taking a dent out of our budget. And but for me, for example, if I was there a few years ago, I would not have approved of hundreds of billions and trillions of dollars to large central banks and corporations. I would probably try to give tax breaks or tax credits to lower income families in general.
But that's also a misconception, because what happens is if you tax the highest income earning individuals, you only make a very small amount of money over 10 years, about $47 billion. If you bring the taxes up to where they were when people were doing well in the 1950s, you bring it from 2% of GDP to 6% of GDP, you're now bringing in $292 billion extra a year, which will take care of a lot of our fiscal problems and will be the same as when we were doing well.
I think you make a lot of sense of what you're saying, but again, I don't think it's a revenue problem. I think it's a spending problem.
No, it is a revenue problem. That's the rhetoric that people hear. It is a revenue problem. Our revenues now are as low as they've ever been since the Depression. And that's the part that we need to be sure that it gets out there, that the truth is actually told, that we don't wrap our arms around the rhetoric that the other side keeps spewing.
Well, I definitely agree there's a lot of rhetoric that they are spewing, but I do think that we do need to cut, we do need to make cuts. We can't continue to spend forever, borrow forever, and print money forever.
I know that your congressional district is a very, very large one, and I know that Woodhaven is a relatively new addition to this new district, but the saying is that all politics is local, so I just have to ask, can you name 2 things about Woodhaven? 2 schools, streets, subway lines, anything about Woodhaven? I just want to get some sense of your familiarity. And if you don't know, that's okay, because you still have plenty of time to learn about us, but I just want to put that out there.
Yeah. It's definitely a good question. It's an important question. I had some friends and family who lived in Woodhaven when I was a child, and I used to come out here with my family to visit them. I know it's a largely Christian neighborhood, to the best of my understanding. I'm a practicing Christian. I go to Catholic church with my future wife every weekend, and I do know that it's largely Anglo-Saxon. And I guess in terms of whatever major issues are confronting the community and facing the community right now, I would love to hear, and that's part of why I've come to hear what sort of issues are really facing you guys, and what sort of solutions can be done.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and I know it's mostly a middle-income, working-class neighborhood as well. Yes.
All right, thank you.
Sure. But no, that being said, I would like to hear anyone who has any specific issues concerning the neighborhood that I could potentially influence on the federal level. Yes?
Then after you spoke about where you could just be taken away from the media, could you expand on that?
Sure, yep. Unfortunately, the mainstream media didn't really cover this issue that much. When I'm speaking, there are not too many people who are even familiar with the new National Defense Authorization Act. They signed it into law on January 1st, and here we are, 11 years after the 9/11, and basically, they're saying that we still need more rigorous, more strict measures for this stuff. However, flipping over our rule of law and arresting innocent people and throwing them in jail indefinitely is not the solution, and it goes against numerous amendments in our Constitution.
Well, if they were innocent,
Well, they should at least be able to go to trial. That was always our system since the beginning.
well, it depends on their crime.
No.
I mean, were they trying to blow up a city or something? I mean, if so, you would...
But how did
You would go to court. We have a court system. We have a legal system in America. That's what this system is based on.
Did they put any parameters onto who would be arrested?
Very vague. Very vague. And as you know, I mean, these bills in Congress, are 100 pages long. Most of the representatives don't even read the legislation. And I want to put forth legislation which actually mandates that they read the entire bills before they vote on them. Through a mandate. Through a constitutional, legal mandate.
Fine, you tell them they have to do it. How are you going to know that they can take them at their word? Because obviously the word of most politicians to us is meaningless anyway.
Absolutely.
They say one thing tomorrow, they say something else. So how are you going to enforce that? By just saying you have to do it, that doesn't quite cut it.
No, but this is something that's actually gained popularity, and there are people out there in the Senate who are pushing forth these types of mandates to mandate that the representatives do read the bills entirely. And anyone in Washington, D.C., any policymaker, any lobbyist will tell you that these bills are 500 pages and they hardly read any of it.
But they could.
And it would probably encourage them to shorten the bills. And this is also something that over 80% of the American people support.
We got to move on.
Yeah, sure?
Great.
Yep. Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you.